excellent insights on how we should go about our entrepreneurship journey and what tech's future upholds for us. Our speaker's entrepreneurial understanding has no bounds. He has uplifted numerous startups and is one of the best angel investors and has had years of experience at which he is best at. Yes, you guessed it right. Entrepreneurship. Please join me in giving a hearty welcome to Mr. Shashank Randev. Welcome, sir. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And delighted to be here. Thank you, IIIT Pune, for inviting me. I would have loved to have been at the campus doing this physically and interacting because there is no alternative to that. But such a time that we've gotten comfortable with virtual, and I'm glad that meaningful engagements and conversations are happening and taking place online as well. First, I need to check, am I audible and clear enough? Because I've just changed my earphone.
Yes, sir,
So,
you're audible. I mean, it's
perfect.
clear.
Great. So, guys, I'll let me begin with my journey first, and how I landed up in this space, and then kind of bring about talk a little bit about um how we are looking at startups right now and what are we doing, stuff like that. So I started my journey very much, uh, and the reason why I'm giving this backstory is because we live in uncertain times, right? And I want to tell you and your generation is that times every 10-15 years do change, and we always see these dips and lows, right? So that's very important to know, and being uncertain is not bad. So I started very much as a normal student. I did my engineering and passed out in 2003, and since then I have been doing a bunch of things here and there. And I passed out. I worked for a polyfilms company. That was my first job in Bombay.
Okay.
Did that for some time, got bored, moved out, went to Pune, worked with Zensar Technologies, and then like everybody else, I was aspirational in doing pursuing an MBA. So I started preparing for an MBA. Didn't get through the university I wanted to go, so I went to Delhi. Did joined NIIT Limited, and was working there. And then eventually got through MBA. I joined IMI. Post IMI, I was at an inflection point, right? This is way back in 2009 when uh, the startup culture was not that aspiring for uh, many of us, or at least our parents, right? Today, if you go start a startup, and the parents feel proud. And right after MBA, usually folks join MBA programs to get a better placement. And here I was completing my MBA, and I had the opportunity to go back to NIIT Limited, right? Which was the obvious thing, or get placed, right? But just like anybody, get an X package and just start working. And then out of the blue, I got this opportunity to move back to Bombay, which is where my heart lies. But joined a startup, and as a co-founding member, right? Which is paying me one-fourth of the salary which possibly a corporate would have offered me, right? And I lapped onto that, and I think that was a choice or a decision which I took, which I think had effects on how I kind of saw opportunities emerging. I then became part of the founding team at VC Circle, which was a SaaS platform, which eventually then got acquired by News Corporation. So I saw the entire journey of joining a startup to an acquisition. That got me excited. I was in the space of building out a product which was providing secondary research to private equity and venture capital funds. So they were my client, and it just gave me very, very deep insights. And then I decided, and I was very fortunate. Luck plays a, you need to put in hard work. You need to do, given the effort. But as your grandmother or your nani or dadi used to say, right? You do the task and just forget about it. And that's what it was, right? We were just building a company, and we were fortunate that it got acquired by News Corporation. We saw a good exit, and then again by luck, I ended up becoming a founding member for an early stage fund based out of US. And that gave me exposure on direct investments, which gave me confidence to start investing in companies, and then which gave me confidence to join hands with my other partners to start 100x.vc. And what I'm trying to say is that no matter what the circumstances are around, a lot of these things are personal choices, and trust me, personal choices make a lot of difference, and not the choices you make thinking what others would be judging you on. That really doesn't help. So with that, I'd like to begin my presentation, which is largely on how we look at companies. It's a
Right.
slide I use a lot, and just giving an insight into, and these are some basic tenets and principles, right? If you're a founder, what not to do, right? Cultural habits is not only when you're pitching to VCs, it's just about how you just build out businesses, right? What not to do, what to expect, how to approach situations, problems. So let me just bring up the presentation.
Sure. Well, for the audience, I request you to put your questions in the chat box, and that will be answered towards the end of the session. So yeah, hold still for the presentation, and yes,
Let's give me a minute. Huh?
sure, sure, sir.
Hey, sorry, Tik. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, great. So now, as Jay mentioned, we are an early stage fund. We've gone ahead and invested in a bunch of companies across India since 2019, and we are doing all of this to identify and fund exceptional Indian founders. And we've invested in many early stage founders from colleges, e-cells, third year and fourth year students as well. And that's the objective, that can we come in early and identify and invest in early stage Indian entrepreneurs across age groups. uh, Currently, what we've done so far over the last 3 years, we've done 80 investments. We've deployed 220 crores, 25 lakhs each per company, and we've gone ahead and cumulatively raised 65 million, a little upwards of 65 millions, um, as follow-on investments after our investment for these companies. And 75% has come through, percentage is wrong, but 75% has come through VCs, and 28% has come through other angels and HNI networks who use the iSafe instrument to kind of invest in these opportunities. So as I said, right, it takes a wise man to learn from his mistakes, but a wiser man to learn from others. And today, as aspiring founders or as aspiring experimental people, I would say, it's a great time to be looking at opportunities. Why? Because this generation is sitting on a decade or a decade and a half long um, journey of failed and successful startups and unicorns, right? So there are stories, there are lessons, there are case studies to be learned from, and hence, the onus lies on you all to kind of figure out how to utilize the existing knowledge information out there, right? Some of the points I'll talk about is largely on why companies don't get funded by early stage entrepreneurs, right? But you can pick up these lessons in any attribute of your life, right? Some of them would be common, and you will be able to kind of utilize them in some capacity or the other. So founders working on an idea which is not easy to explain, or they are unable to communicate. I think one of the basic tenets of raising funds is to communicate and convert your technology into a business. And many a times founders fail to do that. No matter how complex the idea uh, you know is, and it might be useful also to the entire community, but it has no value to customers and investors, they can't understand it, right? And founders tend to forget this basic point. Now everything can be built, but it's not necessary to build everything, right? And the focus needs to be very sharp, because in your early days you can't go horizontal immediately. You need to verticalize, you need to be focused, you need to understand where are your strengths, and from there you kind of derive which path you want to take. A case in point would be uh, Jeff Bezos when he started, right? Uh, Today Amazon is doing everything under the sun, but 30 years ago or 25 years ago when they started, he was only focused on one category, right? So the biggest failure happens when founders or tech founders are unable to release the product as they're building it ground up. So if they do not believe that in partnership, or and they sometimes overbuild the product, right? So your priorities end up in chaos, and you end up wasting a lot of time, right? So have that focus. Startup founders hire the wrong people, right? The mistake startup founders make is to hire people with credentials, right? Whenever they pitch to investors, like, you've gotten a 15-year-old guy who understands the business development aspect of it, right? And they fail to understand, right? The startup will be in serious trouble when you end up hiring people who have no hunger to achieve, because a 15 or a 20-year-old resource who has industry experience but will come with his own set of baggage of entitlement, commitment expectations, right? So for instance, let me give you an example. You guys are 22, 23, 24 uh, year old founders, and you guys eat late, watch a movie, and then start your coding, right, in the night. And you sleep at like 4, and then you at 4 a.m. you send a note to your team, guys, let's finish this. This is the code, and let's try developing it, right? The other person might not be comfortable with the timelines who's used to working 9 to 5, right? So the culture aspect also needs to be it is very important, right? You don't understand, but when you meet as friends, when you start a company, you're indirectly setting a culture, right? At 100x, what happened when we joined, and all of us have different patterns of working, right? But and similarly, one individual likes to work a little late, the other individual likes to begin the work a little early, and all of us decided that can we figure out how we can start our days, and we guys begin our days at 8 to 8:15 a.m., right? That's we begin evaluating companies and interacting with companies, right? And that started very early on in our thing. So we set this culture, like, are we all comfortable coming at 8:15 in the office? Everybody like, theek hai. I wake up a little late, but why not, guys? Because we can get a lot of work done. We can avoid the traffic, and when we started doing that, we were meeting at least 5 to 6 companies, spending 30 minutes each by the time we hit lunch, right? Now that's a lot of condensation of work to be done, right? But if all of us are not together on that, it wouldn't work, right? So a lot of time when investors are asking founders, what are you trying to do? And they throw in names. Oh no, we've got this individual. Our immediate next question would be to understand, are they culturally fitting into the entire pattern of working? And if it's not there, then founders don't get funded. Being successful in raising too much money, I think we've also seen this, that sometimes founders become successful in raising money, and then they become complacent because they think that raising the first round is the most important one. It's not like that, right? You need to continuously be on that treadmill, right? You can't afford to build a lifestyle business. You need to be building a business which has the capacity to kind of walk to kind of scale and go to a series A and then series B in the shortest time. And that's the mindset. You might not make it in that time frame, that's different, but having that mindset is very, very important. Now, building products that no one wants. I think this is the most common mistake we've seen. It's like a bunch of kids sitting, or a bunch of founders sitting over drinks, or maybe leaving their job. They've been working for the last 10 years, and suddenly this year a lot of things are happening in startups. So हम भी product start करते हैं. And that hypothesis is not well researched, right? Just because you read a few articles on anecdotal success on certain categories, you start building a product, right? Without realizing that the customer, user, buyer, and client doesn't even exist, right? So very, very important and very imperative for you as an individual, as a founder, to build, to identify, to build a product which is solving somebody's problem, and it is a big problem, and you have a solution which can be sold to a customer, user, buyer, client for the next 3-4 years. Now, there is no respect for money, frugality, and budget. Now, this is what I was trying to allude to earlier on. We come from a culture. I mean, all of us. I hail from middle class families. My father was a government officer, and it's we fail to understand that we come from an India, which is where our dadis and nanis have taught us कि जितना पैर है उतनी चादर फैलाओ, that kind of a that kind of a mindset. Yet we've watched so much content on Silicon Valley and startups and US that as soon as we get funded, we think we need to spend, right? And we forget our basic values, right? And founders, we are building for India. We are in India, and we have a currency which is Indian, right? We're not in the Silicon Valley. We're not in the US. We're not a developed nation yet, right? And hence frugality has to be there even if we get funded, right? So we've seen a lot of founders, they spend recklessly on fancy office setups, customer acquisition, parties, promotion, advertising, branding. You don't need to do that when you raise your initial check, right? We are looking for people who have, the ability to, develop an understanding of finance. Now, I like to get everybody's opinion here. And unfortunately, on the Google Meet, I can't see faces. So if you are given a choice as a founder, you have built out a product, okay, and now your product is gonna go. There's an interest. You guys are in Pune now. Let's say Cummins. I don't want to name a company. Actually, sorry. Large company comes in and gives you 1 lakh rupees. And on the other side, you've got 10 companies who are giving you only 1,000 rupees per year. Okay, 10,000 rupees from 10 customers per year, or 1 lakh rupees from one large customer, enterprise. When you just finished your product, which one would you go for?
Well, personally, I think I would. Okay, Suryansh has to say. Yeah, Suryansh. Go on.
So, sir, I believe that I would think about the product first. It depends on what kind of product I am actually building. So, if I say that I am building a software which doesn't require a lot of what you would say, kind of an external support, or for example, I'm setting in a production scene for example, a production thing. I'm making a toffee, for example. So I'd be requiring the capital, but I won't be requiring that much of industry assistance in that. So I'd be choosing a single investment because then there won't be a lot of interference from 10 different kind of people, and I'll have the freedom to actually do what I want to do with my product. Whereas on the other hand, if my product, I'm not very sure with my product that whether it's going to work or it's not going to work, then I'll be choosing 10 different people because then I'll be having a different kind of a you know a lot of a set of opinions as to what what needs to be done or what is to be done in that particular.
Okay. Who else? Anybody?
Yeah. Anyone who wants to speak something?
There is no right and wrong answer. I'm not going to downgrade your assignments or anything like that. So feel free to talk. Let's make it conversational. या फिर तुम लोग मुझे ना, I'll have to pick people out.
Sir, I'll pick
Yeah.
the 10,000 per 10 year because I'll require more support for long time and more customers also I can get.
Okay. Great. So, I mean, there's no right and wrong answer, but from my vantage point, if I'm investing in a company, right? See, what happens is you're looking for product validation from an investor's mindset, right? Now, what happens is that from an investor's perspective, we prefer having a validation, and the validation for me comes from personally from 10 customers, right? Even if they're paying you less, right? Because that one customer, you can get choked on serving one big customer, because the more bigger the customer or the contract, the more time it will take to develop and deliver the product, right? Plus, you're building a product which needs to be consumed. From an investor perspective, the validation comes from 10 people using it rather than one person, right? Because if you only choose to work with one, in my mind, you're stunting the growth of your product, right? But if you have 10 customers using it at the same time, you're getting constant feedback and you become more confident. Okay, 10 customers, this is how I envision my product to be consumed, right? So as an early stage founder, you tend to customize your product and services for a big customer, and that creates financial dependency. And hence, as an investor, we look at companies which have validated their product with a larger base, because the objective is to invest in high growth and large market opportunity companies, right? And that can only be validated by the number of people or the penetration of the customer, right? Irrespective of the revenue right now. Now, Superman founders become bottlenecks for growth. We've seen a lot of these founders in the industry, right? These founders are lone rangers. They can't work with a team. They do not trust anybody. They do not delegate. Every founder is human. No one has unlimited hours of working, or having the energy to solve everything. These startups cannot scale because you end up reaching a decision, a point where you can't make decisions because you're fatigued, you're exhausted, right? And founders sometimes fail to understand that, because if you don't have the mindset of building out a team, how are you going to build a large business? You have to trust people. You need to learn to delegate. And if you can't do that, you will not grow, you will not scale. And that's the challenge in some founders who have this mindset. Raising money from wrong investor, I think this still happens, but I think just founders need to be cognizant of who they raise money from. Your selection of the first lead investor is critical. It's a very critical decision which should be taken on investor pedigree and not based on investment amount. Now, this one, I think, is another reason why I think over the last years we might have not invested in at least 50 companies. They could have become growth stage companies, or maybe are still doing well, but we did not fund them because we saw that the founders were looking to generate income and not wealth, right? Now, the first and only priority should be about financial health of your company, right? So salaries are important, but that cannot be the reason why you're raising funding, right? If you're raising 100 rupees and you say, no, 25 to 30 rupees boss is my this thing, because I have put in my hours and I have loan to pay. We are not here to do all of that, right? We are here to back your vision, and we're giving you the money for building out your vision and rolling out your vision through a product, through the technology, through the market, right? And holding our hand to access our network. That is the whole objective. Founders, you already own a large share of equity person, and it is your fiduciary responsibility to increase the value of that equity, right? And hence the focus should always be on wealth creation and not income generation. Now, some of the reasons why, again, startups don't get funded, and I've touched upon, right? Too many revenue models, multiple directions, everyone is your customer, right? So when a startup's trying to ape large corporate businesses by offering everything to everyone cannot scale, right? Build expertise, nor create leadership position, right? Attempting to satisfy every customer, they end up burning up capital in creating multiple products, SKUs or offerings. They end up becoming bespoke services businesses or living dead startup, which is not funded by VCs. Now, this is also another reason they throw away money on buying technology and people for building a world-class product, right? Seed stage startups trying to perfect the product in their first year without customer engagement or user is a recipe for disaster. Do not do that, because your product needs to be validated. Be it free or paid does not matter at an early stage. If there is no customer validation for the MVP, the capital invested is a write-off. Right? So many founders, to keep investors happy, validate the MVP from investors. It's a path to failure. You have to validate your product through customers. Now, there are cost and pricing issues, weak business model, and Me Too offerings, right? That's one of the reasons why companies don't get funded, because the brightest of the idea will fail if there is no visible path to make money. The so-called cool, unique, or noble idea out to change the world cannot survive by having perpetual losses with the use of venture capital, right? There has to be a visible path to profitability. Now, no moat or unique IP or barriers to entry. I think this one is important. Some startups do not have any unfair advantage, right? They are either copycats of existing businesses with no unique value proposition or no direction to become a leader, right? These startups fail because they can't fight competition, right? Startups whose product, business, and services can easily replicate find themselves among a lot of competition, and they get outcompeted by other entrants in the market. Now, another reason why founders don't get funded is because very early on they've diluted too much equity. And I think this is the biggest mistake a founder can do, because compensation by equity is the costliest way of financing a business. Sometimes founders are vulnerable and they end up meeting, a consultant advisor who says, I will do this and do that. And they end up giving 5% equity, right? Which is like a lot, right? Now, equity granted without vesting and without any understanding of buyback options is dangerous, right? If you're giving equity, even if it's 5%, it has to be a milestone base. There has to be a vesting, right? 1% given on, let's say, you're bringing in a business development advisor, that person will open doors for you. So we see these common mistakes when early stage founders are starting up. We are starting up, we need help. So somebody says, no, I want 5. You think you're negotiating. You say, no, no, sir, you take 4. But in essence, you're giving away equity, which is the most expensive, because the value of the wealth creation you're doing is increasing the value of the equity. You can't give away equity just like that. Why certain startups don't get funded? Now, companies that can't grow fast and absorb capital at high speed do not fit into investment. I'm just summarizing the points, right? If you don't have the ability to absorb large capital and roll it out, that's one of the reasons why VCs will not fund you. Asset heavy businesses don't attract VC funding. Okay, VCs like to invest in asset light business models which bring technology, innovation, and team execution. We've also seen lack of focus, right? Too many moving parts, absent complementary skill sets of founders is another reason why founders don't get funded. Basic unit economics, no clarity on financial metrics, right? Very, very important. I'll touch upon this. Capital structure, too much dilution. Now, there are a lot of engineers who want to build out businesses, build out a great tech, but you can't go to a VC or you can't convert that into a business till the time you understand what business means, right? And business is a function of financial metrics. You need to know what metrics are, right? So, you need to understand how to build your elevator pitch, or whatever you want to call this, elevator, toilet pitch, bathroom pitch, whatever. As long as you can uh, mention or you can describe your business or describe an opportunity in 30 seconds for an investor to get interested and open the door for the next 30 to 35 minutes, which gives an opportunity for you to present your deck, right? Now, some of the things which you need to have on your deck: team slide, problem statement, solution, your USP, impact, talk about the expected business impact, key USP, market opportunity, right? Highly talk about key persona and a bottoms up calculation of revenue opportunity. Comparative analysis, right? One of the most important slides for me: positioning, how your positioning is different, journey so far. What have you achieved until now in product/business, absolute values, percentage growth in revenue is relevant, right? Business roadmap, how are you expecting business to grow in the next 2 quarters? Product roadmap, what are you planning to build in the product over the next 2 quarters? Some of the metrics which you need to have, which only you know, which is applicable to your business, right? Whether it's a monthly churn rate, retention, TAM, MRR, projection, gross churn rate, MOM growth rate, DAU, that is daily active users, you need to be aware of these things, right? You might have built a great technology product. It needs to convert into a business. And again, one size does not fit all. Different metrics for different types of businesses, whether it's D2C or whether it's a SaaS-based platform. Right? Some of the common things which you need to know, like EBITDA, operating margins, CAC, the amount spent to acquire a customer, LTV, DAU, MAU retention, sales funnel. Very important when you're building up, because You and your intention would have been nice to build out the greatest technology, but it needs to convert into business, right? It needs to go out in the market. It needs to make that impact, right? That's why you built out that product in the first place. And to achieve that, you need to convert your existing tech into a business and create a distribution channel for that product to be consumed. That mindset, despite the fact we are all engineers, has to be developed. And I'm assuming a large audience over here is engineering, but technical background, right? So convert your product to business, right? If you say, I've built a 128-bit encryption, so what? No, no, sir, this security is unbreakable. Okay, so what? No, it can transfer valuable credit card data safely without theft, and hence save 5 million for a bank and make you 1 million. Now I'm interested, right? Because you're helping me understand how it works. So every time you're pitching to investors, these are the only three things which they're listening and they're thinking about. Is there money to be made? Are these the people who can make me money? And how much money can I make? Right? These are the basic realities of VC funding. Our thesis in all of this, we look at founding team, we look at market size opportunity, business model strength, unfair advantage mode, conviction of a minimum 20x return. We were initially investing 25 lakhs, and now we've increased the check size because despite 2022 and the doom and gloom, we feel that this is a good time for early stage entrepreneurs to build out businesses, right, and capture those untamed markets or non-consumption markets. So we've increased our ticket size to 1.25 crores, and as Jay mentioned earlier, we make all our investments through India's simple agreement for future equity. This information is all mentioned on our website, but essentially it helps founders receive money rather than dilute equity upfront, right? So there is no need for expensive lawyers, costs are reduced, time taken to conclude the transaction is 2 to 3 weeks, and the founders can focus on his or her business and not worry about SHA, complex processes, right? iSafe is customized for Indian laws, so it's legit. And some of the features, you can read it on our website. A few success stories, right? And the success stories are continuously increasing. We have Smiles.ai, which raised Series A of 23 million after we funded them in September of 2019. They recently raised a Series A. Kerala Banana Chips, our D2C brand, really doing well. They were recently showcased at Shark Tank. DataSutram, a location intelligence platform. Cora Health, which is a vertical healthcare platform. Super Scholar, an edtech company. BlueLearn, edtech / community-based platform company which got funded by Lightspeed. Vitra.ai, great company, deep tech company building, having built a platform which can automatically convert any video in 52 languages without the dialect coming out. Ensuring that the dialect remains there without the voice sounding automatic or automated. And these are some of the success stories, right? So our objective is to invest in very, very early stage companies. When we invested in BlueLearn, they were third year students, or rather when we spoke with them for the first time, they were third year students in BITS Pilani. And we weren't sure whether they're going to build out a business in third year or this is just a side project. So we observed them and spoke to them and learned about their business for a year before investing in them in the fourth year. And now they're raising their third round, right? So these are some of the stories. DataSutram, they were fresh out of college and we invested in them. They were just completed and 6 months post college. They were building this out. They were attempting to build this out. Great founders, all three of them. And this is how we are going about, identifying opportunities, right? Some of the VCs who backed our portfolio companies after we invested, as I mentioned, Sequoia, Alphabet, Lightspeed, very active VCs across India. But we also realized that, many founders, particularly from technical institutes, might not always be able to build out businesses, right? They still need to enhance their skills, despite the fact they built out great product, right? So we've introduced a 100x Entrepreneurship Gurukul, which essentially is an education platform for aspiring entrepreneurs with no cost, no equity, and no fee. We are in our fourth cohort now, 12 weeks of online course, live plus recorded video content, and as I mentioned, not for profit, right? So this is, you get access to videos on your GTM strategy, your product development, and selling to an enterprise, stuff like that, which gives you insights and confidence. At least that's our objective, to kind of go to the next level, right, and become more relevant by the time you pitch to an investor. We were recently covered by Forbes magazine. I'll encourage all of you to read that article because it covers how we operate, why we do this, why are we motivated to do this, right? What is the reason behind us putting in so much hard work of doing 80 investments over the last 3 years, but more importantly now going after 100 investments a year, is because we genuinely believe there's an opportunity to support early stage entrepreneurs because you've got great ideas. It's the time for Indian generation, your age, and we firmly believe that great businesses sitting out of Pune, Maharashtra, Nagpur, Delhi, Chandigarh, Kochi can be built out, and not only for global market but also for Indian markets, right? So we provide a combination of smart capital, which is capital plus education, and then obviously our network, right? And yeah, if any one of you is looking to build out businesses and you have something, feel free to apply for a class 08, which is where we are now looking at funding company. I'm also available on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me and write to me. I'm also fairly active now on Instagram, trying to make a bunch of reels so that early stage entrepreneurs can uh, you know learn as much. But I'm open to suggestions and would be very happy if you can reach out and say what you think could be the right content for entrepreneurs to be pushed out, and I'm very happy to incorporate that. But yeah, very approachable. Feel free to reach out to me. Now I've come to the end of the presentation, so happy to take up any questions.
Sure, sir. So we do have some questions on the YouTube live chat. So Midhun wants to ask, let's say there are risks involved in a in building a startup. So what is the right time? Like, should a student, I mean, should a college student work upon building a startup, or a experienced person? So yeah, what's your call in this?
So I don't see. Just give me a minute, and then I'll
Yeah.
just. Yes. Okay. So the question is, should companies be built out by experienced people or students? Is
Yeah,
what the
yeah,
question.
yeah.
You guys underestimate the power you guys are sitting on, right? Uh, Let me give you a stat. India over the next 10 years, uh, 85, and I could be wrong on the percentage, but a large set of the percentages towards this side, where 85 to 90% of the population would be in the age group of 18 to 35. Okay. This means the highest number of consumers would be from this generation,
Right.
right? So we just see how Suryansh hai, Amog hai. I can only see you guys right now. There are other people also. Midhun is there. Uh, Rathore Bhargav is there, right? You guys have a better pulse of what can be used by customers because you are at that generation. We guys, I'm 41 right now. 10 years down the line, I'll be 50. What is the pulse of the trend? Am I in a better position or are you in a better position?
Right.
You think VCs know everything, but we learn from founders, right? And we want to learn from you guys and we want to give that capital, right? Hence, we fund companies like, for instance, Blue Learn. They've been funded by Lightspeed. They're raising another round, right? And they built a community platform for students, right? Because they felt that was the problem in consuming content. right? So there are advantages and there are disadvantages. Advantages for students is that you can understand the pulse and what could be the actual need. Like I come from a generation when my father used to send me with a check and I used to stand in the bank line. I don't think so any of you are in that generation. Or if your dad tells you, "Beta line में जाके खड़े हो जाओ," you're like, "Are you dad? What are you saying? यार पेटीएम करो यार, खत्म करो यार, क्या टाइम वेस्ट कौन से जमाने से आप आ रहे हो पापा, इतना टाइम वेस्ट करते चलो." Right? You're understanding my point, right?
Right,
So
right.
hence you're automatically problem solvers, right? There is enough friction in India, and you as a generation has the insight and the opportunity to develop solutions for it. Correct. So that is why you building out solutions is very, very important. Now, an experienced person will have experience, but might not end up becoming a relevant product, right? What you guys lack is experience, right? And hence you need external mentorship, incubation center support, uh, venture capital money who help you leverage and understand how to do business, right? But you're trying to build a product and which is a solution for a large problem. Hence, in my mind, I think we initially venture capitals used to look for early stage for founders who had some experience. We don't have that bias. We've invested in companies which had 15 to 20 years of work experience. We've invested in companies, as I said, Data Sutram, 6 months out of college, and we've invested in companies in students who were pursuing their final year engineering. So don't have that mindset, don't have that block. Your vision should be, have you touched upon the next big problem, and you should be able to identify it. Rest everything can be built around it, right? If you have the intention and motivation. So no bias on those lines.
Okay, so sir, adding to this, as you mentioned that Blue Learn, the founders were thinking that as a side project. So,
No,
and you, yeah,
they weren't thinking as a side. We didn't
yeah,
invest in them in third year because we thought this could be a side project.
okay, okay,
So we waited for them to go to fourth year. They were still doing this. This was not a
okay.
side project, right? That's
Right.
that's when we got confident.
But what I feel is maximum college, maximum students, they have a side project and, they have something, they have a business model and they want to do it. But at the end, you have a job and you feel that, there is some risk involved in this particular business model or, it will have success or not. So what they do is they pursue their job and side by side they manage their startup as well. So what do you think that this is a better idea or doing full time in your particular idea is better?
You see, when you're raising funding, you have to be full time.
Okay.
There is no now, but in if you start as a student, obviously we understand you're building out from college, right? And that shows grit, right? That you're able to build, you're able to do your college and able to build out business, right? By the time you're
Yeah.
completing your college, you have a business model ready and ready to be funded. But those conversations start early on, right? As soon as you finish college and you build something, you can't go out and say, okay, I'm done, right? You have to speak with investors beforehand. You have to understand what is happening, right? And that's where we come in, right? We want to come in and speak to founders at that time and understand. But once you've passed out and once you're doing working, right? If you generally believe in this in your company which you're building on, then you have to give full time, right? Founders cannot be part time.
Right.
That's
Right.
very, very clear.
Okay. So Saksham has a question, sir. Nowadays, established startups are extensively expending their money in marketing. I think so. He's saying that the emerging startups are also trying to do the same. What do you suggest to young founders towards making a balance between finance and marketing?
I think today, when you're starting out, there are so many growth hacks, right? With LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and now WhatsApp, and then WhatsApp groups, and it's just without spending zero money, you can create that awareness, right? 256
Yeah.
लोगों का ग्रुप बना दिया आपने, उसमें पोस्ट कर दिया. You go to Discord community, you go to Telegram. There's just so much. Again, if you really get down to marketing and use your brain, then without spending a single money, you can use growth hacks and push out your product, right? By the time you utilize those growth hacks, you could have raised seed fund and then pre-series A, right? And then you actually start spending on marketing. Now, a lot of large companies, as they grow, there is a requirement to get customers' mindshare and pocket, right? And hence, marketing will continuously increase. Some of the growth stage companies burn a lot of money, and that is why they're saying in 2022 we need to build our balanced businesses, because if you're spending marketing on marketing, that's fine, but if you're not making enough revenue, then Series D onwards you will not get funding. If you only are generating revenue and you're becoming profitable, is when you will get funding, right? But in the beginning, these questions are not to be addressed. Right now, in the beginning, you're trying to figure out your product market fit, right? Is the product needed? We all, if you're at any stage right now, we are at that stage, right? And up till in this stage, you don't need to spend on marketing. There are multiple growth hacks which can create awareness about your product solution.
All right. Okay, so there is a question from the YouTube chat. According to you, how is the tech landscape going to change in future? Companies, how, like let's say there are certain techs that are become obsolete. So what according to you is the future?
Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
Yeah, sure. So according to you, how is the tech landscape going to change in future? So like there are certain techs that become obsolete with time. So what according to you is the future? Like how is this going to change?
So Jay, I am that kind of a person. We all, I don't know what, but you must be having your elder brothers and your uncles and your chachas who at some point said, "ठीक है, चलो पढ़ाई करते हैं और GMAT बैठते हैं और US निकलते हैं या UK निकलते हैं या Canada निकलते हैं, right?" And my what I try and say now is that the time now for India is where what Silicon Valley was in 1960, or what was happening in China in the 1980s, right? So for India, this is a golden opportunity. All we need to do is pull up our sleeves and just start building, because this is Silicon Valley. 10 years down the line, India is the place where everybody would want to come. Jokes मिलते थे ना, WhatsApp पे आते थे कि वो लाइन में खड़े हुए बाहर वो इंडिया का वीजा लेने के लिए. People used to joke around that cartoon. That's actually going to become a reality. That is actually going to become a reality, because the brain power, the population, हमारी जनता इतनी है और जनता के पास नेटवर्क आ गया है, टीयर 2, टीयर 3, टीयर 4 तक आ गया है. टीयर 4 का बॉय, why can't he be like a tier 1 boy? They can. They can, and they don't need to come to tier 1. It's so expensive. They can build out efficient businesses from tier 2, tier 3. Nothing is stopping them, right? That power which has come to India is a great time, and it's called an inflection point. So with that, today we have, as I mentioned, we have many friction points, and hence 1,000 friction points, 1,000 problems, 1,000 solutions to be built out, right? All we need to do is be clear, concise, and persistent with that. And hence, I think the biggest development India had, if you travel to Middle East, if you travel to other countries, you will be surprised. UPI we don't appreciate, but UPI is such a unifier.
Yeah.
UPI is such a unifier. आप Google Pay से आप पे कर रहे हो, रिक्शा वाला पे कर सकता है. मैं पानी वाला को बॉटल लेनी है, पानी वाले को कर सकते हो. And UPI जो गवर्नमेंट ने क्रिएट करा है, that has built out so many companies, and there are many countries which don't have that facility. So fintech services. We guys are leading beyond imagination. We don't appreciate it compared to the global countries. Now within that, there is opportunity in agri-tech, right? Farm to city. There is, and we've funded a bunch of companies. Obviously, there are companies in softwares as a solution, SaaS companies building out of India, right? It's been a great time for them. Health tech companies, right? Healthcare has always been distorted in India, bringing them together. We invested in a company called Renal Dialysis, which is creating dialysis centers for providing dialysis for 1,500 rupees, right? So healthcare is becoming a unifier. Then on the tech side, deep technology, right? There are deep technology companies which are coming out, like I mentioned, Vitra.ai, right? They are building out softwares which are used by global companies. We've invested in a company called Group.ai. It's a deep fake technology company, right? So all of this is being built out of India. The thing is interesting about India is that we are now turning into a generation which has heavy access of internet, and hence the emerging trends are going to be technologies which are going to enhance our engagement online, and hence Web3 is the biggest trend
Yeah.
which we're going to see in India, right? What exactly is Web3, how it's emerging, is yet to be seen, because there are still use cases being developed. Metaverse कहते रहते हैं लोग काफी, लेकिन metaverse is too long, right? उसमें
Correct.
augmented reality है, उसमें Web3 भी fit होगा, but this still become a reality, right? And India, I think we just as individuals need to be more confident that you are in the best place. We need to trust each other more. We need to work as teams more. That is the biggest unifier right now we have, because there's no dearth of capital. There are enough investors. I'm here because I'm hoping I can invest in some of you if there are good companies, right? Investors are actively looking for companies. We want great founders, and we are a fund which is only investing in Indian companies. We don't invest in Delaware, we don't invest in Singapore, we don't invest anywhere else. Only India, right? So the trends, everything is up for grabs. Everything is currently up only. EdTech is also up. They say that a lot of people have been fired, but they've been fired because they're at late stage. That profitability नहीं आ रही तब
Right.
crowd हो गया, right? But education as a opportunity is still here. If you're able to conduct your exam sitting at home without getting access to Wi-Fi through an app, right, which can let you without Wi-Fi but let you give you real-time thing, that is still a need, right? Right, so edtech is also not down. Everything is up for grabs, and I feel that India is not in a position to define which are the trends which are going to emerge. I think everything is a trend right now. Each sector is a trend, because we still need to build grounds up, right? If you're building something in fintech, great time. If you're building something in software as a solution, great time. If you're building something in health tech, agri tech, great time. Deep tech, amazing time, right? So everything is up for grabs, and if you are pursuing a path, you should take a deeper dive and go ahead.
Okay. Saksham, I guess you have to say something. Yes, you can. Yeah.
Good morning, sir.
Hi.
Indeed, it has been an insightful session. Actually, I have a doubt like startups are being evaluated in figures that are unimaginable nowadays. And I think that this backs them to raise funding through IPO. But once they get listed, the valuation goes down. So, what do you think? Like, this scenario is occurring because of people are not able to evaluate the startup in a right way, or it's like startups before going IPO are being over evaluated?
See, I don't think so. You should worry too much about IPO किसका हो रहा है, क्या वैल्यू है. I think IPO हो तो रहे हैं.
Yes,
आपके
sir.
देश के अंदर IPO ही नहीं होते थे. Right? बाहर यूएस में अगर आईपीओ हो जाए और अगर वहाँ की आईपीओ का प्राइस भी ज्यादा हो, कोई बात नहीं यार, इट्स यूएस मार्केट सो इट्स ऑल राइट. पर इंडिया कर ले तो वो दिक्कत है. That's what I'm trying to say, right? At least IPOs are happening. At least companies were able to reach to that level. They will make mistakes, right? Everywhere. We are not a perfect, and we are growing as an ecosystem. What do you think was happening in US when the IPO boom was happening? If 10 companies were IPOing, 9 were failing, right? We only hear about the Teslas of the world and all that, right? So it's all of this is good, right? We would have expected that, ठीक है जोमेटो या पेटीएम का होता है, लेकिन पेटीएम यूज तो कर रहे थे. जब तक पेटीएम यूज कर रहे थे चल रहा था, तब विजय शेखर शर्मा वाज गुड, राइट? स्टॉक नीचे गया तो ही that doesn't work, right? That's not correct. So try and understand what has happened in India, right? We have now companies who are going in the 1960s, 70s. You couldn't possibly think of a company which was 10-year-old to go for an IPO. That was just not possible. So those mechanisms are happening for the first time, which is a good indicator. Now we will become a master in kind of streamlining it as we continue to grow. Another 10 years, everything will streamline even further. So I don't think so. An indicator of an IPO not having gone right is an indicator of the ecosystem. How they value it would some धीरे धीरे होगा. The very fact that we are able to build out companies which can go to IPO, which is in itself is a great step, right? So that's my 2 cents on that, Saksham.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Going forward, sir, as like we were talking about the ed tech, so I have a question like, should the education be changed considering the given scenario and the future, that you just told us? So, like, particularly, I feel that we are still on the more theoretical part rather than the practical one in a school kind of stages. So, what do you think? Like, should we change in that?
So the change is already happening, right? The
Yeah,
government has come in with certain regulations over the last 8 9 months they have, and a lot of companies are building around that. So the change is coming. I think everybody acknowledges that CBSE may, the ICSE can, and these have been foundational by the way. FYI though, the all the folks who eventually landed up in US from technical institutes in India eventually came
right,
over by products of ICSE or CBSE and all of these, right? So they've worked, but
correct.
our generation is now different. We have access to a lot of other information. So the real question is, how can you integrate those things and make it more relevant for today's generation, which is what I think the government institutes or entities are trying to bridge, right? So there is a change required. It's not black and white, like shut this and do this. It's an integration of bringing the old values in the new process and enhancing the old process with newer tech or newer patterns or newer formats of teaching, right? And then evaluation and assessing the student's capability or output, right? Which is the most important thing. How do you quantify what the student has learned, right? So that's it is happening, and change I think you'll see in many avenues, either companies building out products or the the central government taking initiatives on education, which is then being percolated to state government and then even private universities, right? So that is happening, and I think the transition is in place.
All right. Okay. So, Siddhant, you have a question. You can, you can speak.
Thank you. Sir, I wanted to ask you a question. Like, it's not a very good question for an investor, but still, sir, I would like to ask. Like, yeah, in the recent startups, sir, we get to see that there are so many rounds of investment, like the seed round, round A, round B, round C, round D. Sir, what I think is that the stake of the founder it gets diluted to a great extent, and at the last, what we see is that the founder does not have the power to take decisions which he want, because already there have been such large investment. So is there any alternative ways to means build a startup without investment, or we can do something with this type of
So,
investment?
so if you want to hold larger equity in your business, then you should not raise venture capital money, right? Because venture capital money is about getting equity given out, right? And same happens with larger companies like so IBM. Who owns the company? It's a corporate who owns the company. There's no one person owning the share, or if it's Infosys, right? And that's the nature of doing businesses, right? You're building up not for yourself, but you're building it out for a larger set of people, right? So not only should investors have in stake because they believed in you, but your employees also, right? Through employee stock exchange um, initiatives, right? Holding shares of the company, and that's the way these companies work. That's the way they're structured, right? And if you're doing really well, like many other founders, they sometimes buy back their own shares. Ritesh bought his shares back.
Yeah.
Elon Musk bought his shares back. Or many people buy it in India. Many founders have bought their shares back. And then there are businesses which did not raise money, like Zero Dha, if I'm not mistaken, had not raised any money, and they built out great businesses, right? So, सब करा जा सकता है. Everything is possible in India.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. I'll come back to you, Saksham. Before that, I'll take Amok's question. So, sir, what has been your most significant failure up to date? What were the learnings?
Well, I've had so many failures there. I've only built up on failures and I've stepped only on failures. My significant failure, I think, I think the significant failure. So I won't say it's an incident. I think,
Okay.
but what happens is, so let's say like when you want something and it doesn't happen, right? Uh, what is the path you choose, right? And I think when I made a certain set of mistakes, right, I was getting disappointed, right? But then I realized that it could be a process, right? Do you have the, so इसको हम startups में कहते हैं pivoting. एक चीज काम नहीं करे तो या तो फिर मैं रूम में बंद करके I start crying and I start watching depressing movies and I'm like, what the hell, man, life is over. Or I say, shut the door, let's reiterate and let's rebuild and let's try, right? So that mindset development I think is important. when failure happens. Failure happens with everybody, and I've also seen many failures. Right. What is important is that do you think you have the motivation to try again with the same enthusiasm? I think that is the most difficult part, right? So based on my multiple failures, I realized that it is important to keep going on. And I think that is the process of keep trying and trying and trying is the most important, because you never know when it will kind of give you a result, right? Or something will work out. And all the failures also have wisdom in it, right? So that experiences, as I began my slide with, right, that will amplify and build into something else, right? So that's it. But I've done so many mistakes. I know that will require another 1 hour session, right?
Well, even I feel that the more failures are there in your journey, the more experienced you become. So yeah, even I do agree to that. Okay, so Saksham, coming to you. Yes, you can ask your
So
question.
I have another question out of curiosity. Like startups move to VC firms to get their funding so that they can carry on their regular operations and expand their business. But uh, how do VC firm get their funding or uh, get the money or source their money to invest in further startups?
Sure. No, good question. We don't get asked that question very often, and it's very much like mutual funds or any other kind of thing, right? Or companies which have raised IPO, they raise money from retail investors. VCs raise money from larger LPs. LPs are limited partners. We are general partners, right? So VCs may concept as GP and LP. So LPs are largely sovereign funds like your or LICs or Canadian pension fund, right? Very, very large companies who can apportion certain percentage of their balance sheet for 10 years, right? And we have that money for 10 years with certain terms that we can deploy that capital and play around, and and then give the LPs a certain interest, and we keep the balance in it. It's an 80-20 rule. 80%, 20%, right? And if you build out unicorns, then that's the kind of thing. And then you also raise either sovereign funds, larger institution companies, or family offices, right? And there are many family offices across the world, right? Industrial family offices. And that's how VCs raise their money, right? Under the guidelines of SEBI registration, alternative investment fund. And we have the money for a span of at least 7 to 10 years to deploy. And that is why we want to invest in outliers. So if we've invested 1 rupee in a company and that turns into 1,000 rupees, then 800 rupees has to go to the investor. I get 200 rupees. But if I've backed a good company, 1 to 200 is still a good margin, right? Right. But if I don't get a good company and 1 rupee invested and I only make 10 rupees, then 80 I have to give, 8 rupees I have to give, right? And I'm making only two. So that is why VCs want to, and that's why we are motivated to invest in innovation, technology, right? Because it takes time, and but the outliers, the risk is very high, but the returns are the upside is extremely high, right? And that's the motivation for investing in companies, and we take the risk because some will fail, but the ones who succeed can end up becoming the Elon Musk or the EV disruptors or deep tech disruptors, right? That's the motivation, and that's how the investors who invest in these VC funds, they park their money for 10 years at least, right? They're patient investors.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right, so going just a bit off the topic, since you being from an engineering college, so there must be some experience, some incidents that you could never forget. You could never forget. So could you please share a few with us as well?
No, I felt engineering was very passive for me.
Okay.
I don't know how it has evolved right now, but I joined 1999 and 2003. I don't think so. I should be talking about my engineering escapade on a public forum. But I think I think one thing which my engineering taught me was to appreciate the diverse culture in India, because I came from a tier one city, and I went to a tier two college, and which saw tier one, two, and three students, right? From Bengal, from Karnataka, from Kerala, from Tamil Nadu. I did my engineering from Nagpur, which was center of India, right? So हमारी trains में भी जो हम जाते थे तो उसके अंदर भी different type of people used to be there. I think my biggest learning was to appreciate nobody can be perfect, right? So somebody might have weak communication skills, but would be amazing at mathematics because they passed off, let's say, from Bengal University, right? And the other person could be great at public speaking, but and also great at science, right? Chemistry or whatever. And then the cultural attributes, right? So appreciating a South Indian for South Indian, Gujarati for Gujarati, a Punjabi for Punjabi, right? I think that's my biggest learnings from engineering. Right? I think besides the college and the backlogs and the vivas and all of that, right? I think it's just that because those are the best times because those are life lessons you will receive. You won't realize it now. But when you go out in the industry, you're working with somebody, right? You'll understand and appreciate their position if they're coming from a certain place because you've been with them, you understand them in engineering, and that is why I think engineering for me personally was a great time to understand what it means to break out of your personal shell of house and your own society and your own school friends and living in the same area colony and move out and go join hands with other people from across the country, right, who are equally aspirational, right, and some of them are not as privileged as maybe you are, but they are better in terms of performance, right? And
Yeah.
those are life learnings I think which I received from my engineering college.
All right. So I would also like to ask you, sir, like this is how we know Mr. Shashank as. But apart from the founder of 100x VC, who is Shashank according to you?
Well, I mean, I love watching movies. I love trekking. I don't do that so much right now. I have a 4-year-old son, so I've really grown fond of him, and he's become my new best friend. And so I'm discovering parenthood right now, and I also like to read books on mythology. I'm interested in mythology, and yeah, and I think just uh, I think I continuously want to develop a curious mind or have that curiousness active, right? So I try and do things which just keeps me excited, right? So whether it's talking to startups or watching Top Gun in late night, because I love that movie. It came out, right? And I was a huge fan of Tom Cruise. I think the movie was great, and then I also am a huge fan of Marvel. When I used to be a fan of DC, many years ago. But when Marvel started coming out, and in 2000, early to the late 2000, I Marvel, the entire series has become my favorite. So I watch a lot of Marvel movies. I am recently finishing their new Marvel episode sitcom or the
Mhm.
new TV shows which are coming around. So that's me on the other side when I'm not investing. I just love I love sci-fi. I love sci-fi a lot, and I love watching content, and I love spending time with my son. And I'm now hoping now that the rains have started, I possibly might end up doing a trek in the coming days.
All
Correct.
right. And
Correct.
yeah,
Marvel came out in 2008 with Iron Man. Correct.
okay. So what's your favorite aspect of being an VC?
Well, I think the favorite aspect of being VC is that it teaches you how to be humble because you come across with such brilliant minds. While you're
Mhm.
only providing capital, but you're meeting these exceptional founders who have these exceptional capabilities of building out such visionary products or solutions, right? And I think that is just learning so much about what's happening. I think the best part about being a VC.
All right. I'll take Suryan's question now. So he's asking, sir, do you believe that tech is the essentiality for the future?
It is getting there. I think we are becoming ever so dependent, right? I mean, look at Zoom's users. It skyrocketed during COVID, right?
Right.
And 60% of the population was in the age group of
Yeah, I
50 to
mean,
75.
yeah. Mhm.
Your mothers, your nannies, your daddies were the ones who were using Zoom the maximum, right? So the dependency on technology is increasing ever so much, right? And I think that will continue to happen. And technology will be the most important element in terms of binding us together.
So, like, even if 50 years, 100 years down the line, do you think that tech will still be, playing roles in all of these things and it would be a major
Absolutely,
part of our day?
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay,
That will
all
be.
right. Okay, so Advait also has a question. Sir, as a college student, managing college while operating their startup is quite commendable, but many find this multitasking quite daunting. So, is there any advice or suggestions that might help students handle both simultaneously?
Don't, don't do it if you can't handle it. Do only things which make
Okay.
you comfortable. If you're not comfortable doing it, don't do it. But if you have an opportunity to join an incubation program, an incubation center
Mhm.
in your college, right, or maybe nearby college, go join that. Try and explore, right? I mean, everybody knows, yeah, all engineers don't study 24 hours, right? We take out enough time for all the other activities, right? There are multiple sessions which we do in terms of watching movies, going out, right? So if you're serious, then there are ways to build out businesses while you're doing engineering because कोई पढ़ाई तो करता नहीं है ज़्यादा. Even I know. Right? So jokes apart, right? I mean, you can take out. It's just a mindset thing. This is what I'm trying to say. It's mindset, right? You can, if you want to, you can, and you can pace it out, right? You can say that maybe this is not. I don't need to aggressively build it out. Normal startup will build it out in 6 months. मैं 1.5 साल में करता हूँ ना क्योंकि मैं third year में हूँ. Let me build it step by step. So that's the mindset you need to develop.
All right. Okay. So Midun has a question, sir. What if a startup which has an impressive idea got funded by a VC, but the startup failed to realize that idea? What would be the scenario after that?
There are many such companies which got funded but eventually didn't make a lot of e-commerce companies which came
Mhm.
in and then didn't do anything. I think that's what I said, right? When founders raise money, they become a little complacent, right? Because one round of funding does not mean you succeeded. Funding is a liability. Now that you raise funding and your media में तुम्हारा नाम वाम छप गया doesn't mean that the thing is over. Now the actual work begins. A lot of founders sometimes forget that. And they go a little slow when the time is to double down. I think that is one of the reasons why founders, those kind of businesses don't succeed. The other is obviously product market fit. Right? Some companies are slightly early. There are many founders who built out companies before their time. The time had not come, right? And those businesses have a different set of challenges, right? Adoption is a challenge, right? If you would have introduced Instagram in 2006, right, people will say, yeah, because I'm comfortable with Facebook, why am I doing Instagram? And that was a challenge in the initial days, right? Orkut came out before Facebook, right? But it wasn't able to sustain or retain. I don't even know if you guys know of Orkut. Are you guys? Oh my God, I'm old. I just realized that. So Orkut used to be Orkut is something which was very active in 2005, 2006 before Facebook became popular. Everybody used to
Okay.
have their. I used to have a profile, and suddenly within and Orkut was it was becoming very very popular, and it just went out. So sometimes product market fitment doesn't fit in. Sometimes first mover's advantage doesn't work for you. Second time entrant has better advantage. All of these things, dynamics take place, right? So it's always a process of trial and error.
Okay. Well, sir, what is the best advice you have ever got? And I want to even know the person, like from whom do you got it? So,
I think many great advices I've gotten from my parents,
okay.
and which always meant my dad said, you fail on something, you keep trying, so don't lose that attitude. My uncle who always taught me to get shit done, basically, right? So don't sulk about things not happening, right? Which is very important because everybody reaches a point in life where they. So I think those attributes are really important. The other most important, which is part of my PPT, is when I mentioned that don't wait to perfect your product. And this is a lesson which I learned in my at VC Circle, where we were trying to build out the SaaS platform, and I'm like, "बस अभी हम launch कर ही रहे हैं, कर ही रहे हैं, कर ही रहे हैं." And then suddenly, my founder comes in. He's like, "Boss, where are you guys moving out and meeting the first customer?" So you're like, "Yeah, but we just need to, make these 4 or 5 features and we'll go." He like, "Don't do that. Just go out in the market. Go out in the market and get feedback, because anyways, you've built out a product. It might not have all the features in its place, but the story is there, right? You need to get initial feedback. That's called beta testing, right? Beta and alpha.
Mm-hmm.
The beta
Yeah.
version goes out, right? And that is what that is an important concept I learned, because I had a mindset, "Nee, let's perfect the product and then go up." And this is something my founder at VC Circle taught me, right? What are you doing? Why don't you just go out and push out? Because anyways, we have built out, right? 85% is there, and our community is a specific one, and we are the only one in this space who are doing this. So get feedback. I think that was the biggest lesson which I learned, which helps us, which it helped me develop that. Don't wait for the perfect moment to kind of go out in the market. You get an opportunity, just roll out, because it's iterative, right? You go out, you come back, you go out, you come back, you make product changes, you go to a product team, ki chale yaar ye chart change kar, then you go back again, right? The journey is always going to be like this, you know. So you need to know, be aware of that. So that's one of the things which I learned very early on.
Okay. So as we are reaching to the end of the session, I want to ask you some personal questions, sir. So do you prefer tea or coffee?
I prefer black coffee. Yes, I was
Coffee.
just
All
having
right.
my black coffee.
Mhm. Okay. And as you mentioned that you want to, you wanted to do this offline, and even like all of us are waiting for an offline event at our college. So in future, would you be interested in coming for a physical session at IIIT Pune and have a cup of black coffee with all of our
Oh,
ESL family members?
of course. I'll be more than happy to do that. I spent a year and a half in Pune at Gensar Technology. I used to stay in Bowdhan, and
Mhm.
then Senapati Bapur Road, and uh, uh, and and used to work in Kharadi. But I would love to come back to Pune and visit your campus. Where is the campus located?
So we're now in the Vadgaon sector. So we are inside business here with institute.
Understood.
So yeah.
No, no, very happy to, and would love to grab a black coffee and then interact with you guys, and possibly hear some good ideas also, right? Anybody who's
Yeah,
working for
yeah, of
an
course.
idea, love to give my 2 cents, share my thoughts on the idea. But yeah, looking forward to that.
You have a great aura, sir, and I can't imagine, how will that feel in offline mode? That would be really,
It
really
could be
great.
disastrous also, only online.
No, no, not at all, not at all. I'm pretty sure about it. So yeah. So what's your favorite memory of Pune? I mean, the weather is really good in Pune. That's what we felt. I guess it was 2 months ago. We went to the college, and
I,
yeah,
I'd, there is a, so when I was staying in Senapati Bapatod, at the end of the road, there is a mandir called Chatur Singhi Mandir.
hmm
And if you walk up Chatur Singhi Mandir, I think when I went last time, they've closed that now. But when you walk up, there's an open patch which makes you get onto the hill, right? So
okay.
every now and then, I used to do these mini treks, which used to start from Chatur Singhi temple and get off at MIT, right? That's the entire walk. So those mini treks in Pune from Chatursangi to MIT, um, from the backside, were the most memorable things I remember about Pune.
Right. And what's your favorite food?
I don't have any preference. I just like food. Any kind of food is good to me. Uh, any.
And
I,
you
I
like to
love
cook?
love trying new food. I do like to cook at times, but I haven't done that in a long time. Yeah, but I can only make like dals and rajmas, nothing too complicated or fancy.
Okay. All right. We'll take the last question from Kalash. So, yeah, I think we missed out on this. So, how can we find the right team and people required for a startup as a college student? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think? Yeah.
No, it's not easy. I think the best way to look at it is when you are already in that fraternity, right? You already have folks in and around who you possibly know and can determine their skill sets, right, in some capacity, right? So that is the best time to understand each other's mindset and figure out if you're a business functional, you business person, and if you feel that your strengths lie on the business side, and you can build out a business. Is there, let's say, Amog or Saksham who are good on tech side, right? So you go up to them and, bhai, are you interested in something like this? Let's figure out. That's the best time for you to figure out if you're in college. If that doesn't work, there are other opportunities. Right? Today on LinkedIn, you can have a lot of interaction with prospective students from other colleges, right? Or or we also ourselves run an initiative which is called Founders Dating. It will be coming up soon, where we try and get single founders and connect them to potential founders, right? And get them to meet, and sometimes they join hands and they start working on the idea of the product, right? Many a times in India, we see that a lot of founders are looking for technical co-founders, but we've also seen a lot of technical co-founders wanting to meet business founders, right? Like, as I mentioned earlier, right? People know how to make technology, don't know how to do business. So we've started, and I forgot to mention, I think I should start mentioning that in my PPT. We have a founders dating initiative, which we do every quarter, every 3 months, which is around ensuring that we can get single founders into one room and connect them to potential co-founders. So again, it's not an easy process, but again, you put your mind to it, you'll eventually find a solution.
Well, I don't want to say this, but sir, we have reached to the end of the session. And any last advice that you want to share with us?
So my only advice to you guys is don't hold yourself back. Don't be shy. Go out, explore, make mistakes, because this is an ecosystem where, as I said, I started my conversation with, right? When I joined a startup, my father refused to acknowledge to our relatives. Anybody who's asked, "Kahan pe kaam kar raha hai beta bhai?" "Wo pata nahi diya kya kar raha hai." Nobody knows, right? Today it's a different time. Your parents will feel proud, right? And it's a different culture right now, where you can afford to make mistakes and fail, right? Even that, if you fail building a startup, there's no dogma attached to it, right? So don't be afraid to try and fail, is my first and foremost advice, right? And second is that this is a great time to be disrupting and building solutions, and your generation is at the right point to understand what the challenges can be. Like I said, standing in a bank line is like not happening for you guys, right? So you will build out solutions like that. If you're able to identify problems which have been there for 60, 80 years, and you can build out solutions, right? Then you should go ahead and do it, because this is a great time to be building out businesses. It's a great time to be learning entrepreneurship, making mistakes, failing, and becoming a mature entrepreneurship, right? So those are my final advice and inputs, and yeah, there you go ahead and experiment.
Well, guys, that was Mr. Shashank. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a lot to learn and take home with you. So the past hour has been really, really great. Not every day we get such opportunity to listen to such insightful talk and learn so many things in such a short span of time. It's been a privilege to talk and listen to you, sir. Listening to you for the past hour has cemented at least one of the reasons for the massive success of 100x VC, and also made us a lot clear about how to go ahead in our entrepreneurial journey. As he said, don't be afraid and leverage the opportunity of the time and situation around you in the upcoming Silicon Valley of the world. Well, thank you for joining us in this beautiful morning. Thanks to the audience as well for being with us today. With this, I'm Jay. I'll take your leave. Thank you, sir. Have a great day. And also, I would like to thank Dr. Bhupendra Singh, sir, for the help in conducting this session. See you again soon. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, team. Bye. Take care.
Bye.